Okay, so this is a semi-continuation of what we did on Wednesday, and I say semi because it could be that we will just go in a completely different direction, but we'll review what we did. So I'm going to start from the Gemara, though, not from the Parsha. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu nosein Chochmah ela lemi sheyesh bo Chochmah. Oh, sorry, starting point was Chaim Zifkin's question to Rebbe, which is how do you become a Chacham, right? And so I was looking into that, and we found three answers. Three leads, three trailheads. Okay, that there's a pesukim in Mishlei, which we did not learn on Wednesday, which is Reishis Chochmah Knei Chochmah Uv'chol Kinyan Chel Knei Bina. So the beginning of Chochmah is to acquire Chochmah. Okay, that's how you start. And in all your acquisitions, acquire Bina. The other one was the other one was. Isaac, you've listened to this recently. Well, do you know what was the third one that was not the Oh yeah, thank you. Yiras Hashem Reishis Das is the Mishlei version. Yiras Hashem Reishis Chochmah is the Tehillim version. Okay, that was another one that you start with Yiras Hashem. And then the third one is the one that we did focus on, which is Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu nosein Chochmah ela lemi sheyesh bo Chochmah. God does not give Chochmah, except he only gives Chochmah to someone who has Chochmah in him. And then there's two sources for this. One is Daniel, Shnemar, Yahiv Chochmah sa lechakimin umanda leyadei bina. He gives Chochmah to the wise and knowledge to those who know understanding. And the context of that is Daniel davening to Hashem to give him knowledge of Nebuchadnezzar's dream and its interpretation. But he gives a whole thing about how all Chochmah comes from God. Then the next one, so Shema Rav Tachlifa bar Ma'arva. I never got what the deal is with the name Rav Tachlifa. Rabbi switching? Is it like I don't know if that means something else. I should ask. Shema Rav Tachlifa bar Ma'arva. V'amra kamed Rabbi Abahu Amar le atun mihasa masnisu la. You guys learn it from there. Anan mihacha masnisun la. We learn it from here to receive in our parsha. Uvelev kol chacham lev nasati chachma. In the heart of all wise-hearted people, God gives Chochmah or has given Chochmah. So our first question was, well, the main question is like, what is the idea, right? And how do you explain the circularity, right? How do you get around the, how do you get started? And then the other question was, to what extent do these two pesukim, does our idea need to come from these two pesukim, or is this just like asmachtos? Are they merely different asmachtos, or is it a different take on the idea? Yeah. Okay. So those were the facts and the questions. Then we said that structurally, there's three ways to get out of the to resolve the question. Okay. One is that God only gives Chochmah to someone who has Chochmah, but you get the initial Chochmah not from God. Okay, that's structurally one thing. Okay, now what would that mean? Okay, that's also going to get into what does it mean it's from God anyway. Second way to get out of it is to say that the terms are being used equivocally, that God gives Chochmah A to people who already have Chochmah B. And then you need to define what is the Chochmah that you need first, and then what is the one that he's giving. I think we had another possibility. Oh yeah, right. Is that, right. I remember that particular thing, but how is that structural? Hold on.
I think there's two structural things. That was just one thing.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, so it's either, okay, all right. So then two structural things. All right. So then we had, okay, so in terms of reviewing, we had three approaches last time, I think. One was Ariel, and then a variant on that is the Meiri, which is that there's a certain type of Chochmah that you get before you start seeking it. Okay, and you get that in childhood. So Ariel said it's like the Chochmah you absorb from your informal education from your parents, and the Meiri put it in terms of formal education, the Girsa Dion Kusa, and I know the other structural thing. The other way is to say that it's not an absolute, right? In other words, if you read it absolutely, then it's an actual contradiction. But if it's just that, the more Chochmah you have, then the more you're going to get from God, then you're not confined by that, that logical problem. So Ariel and the Meiri were really saying that the more Chochmah you get as a child, or the better Chochmah you get as a child, either from informal education or formal education, the more Chochmah you're going to be able to get when you get older. And if you don't have that Chochmah as a child, you're going to be at a disadvantage. All right. So that was one idea. We had another idea, which I attributed to Rabbi Trachtman, but I'm trying to remember if we got it from one of the Mesivta guys. Oh yeah. So no, that was the Meiri. The Yafei Tואר said that the Chochmah it's talking about here is the only type of Chochmah that is not in God's control, which is Yiras Hashem. So we said, what does that mean? And so we theorized that the idea, Rabbi Trachman said, real Chochmah Hashem is that which moves matter. So in the universe, that means that the laws of nature are directly like, that is Chochmah Hashem and it actually moves matter. And in a person, Chochmah is only real to you. Chochmah is only, you only have Chochmah insofar as it's real to you. So if you just know an idea, but it's not affecting your emotions and your decisions, it's not Chochmah. It's potential Chochmah, but it's not real Chochmah. Or as Sforno would say, that's Tselem Elokim, but not Elokim, So we said there that you need Musar and Derech Eretz and Yiras Hashem, meaning you need to work on your psyche and your emotions in order that when the Chochmah comes into your mind, it will flow and express itself in your decisions. And only you can do that. The Chochmah itself comes from God, but you, through your Bechira and you're working on yourself, can set it up to have the Hachana. Yeah.
It sounds very similar to the Rambam's presentation of getting knowledge, where there's 5 different areas that a person needs to be working on in order to talk about in
It's not registering in my mind. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
He talks about different problems and why people can't understand metaphysics.
Okay.
Right.
In the first Chelek when he's talking about the difficulties in getting to metaphysics. Yeah.
Yeah, and he also seemingly talks about.
Oh, I know what you're talking about now. Okay.
And preparing the mind as a receptacle for certain divine knowledge, and then divine knowledge can come in.
Let me go read it. Anyone want a copy? Mm-hmm. All right, I'm hearing those. So. This is one of the 5, right? Meaning, are you saying it's all the 5, or it's a?
I think it's at least one, if not a few of the 5. The Mitos thing.
The Mitos thing is the one I was thinking. Yeah, right.
But there's also logical development of the mind.
Right.
Right. That you need to be involved in physics and mathematics.
Right. So that
certain disciplines in order to then, which also sounds similar to the approach that Ariel's. Right, the area as well.
It is in that category. Correct. Yeah.
Right.
That's hard
to be presenting a few of these.
Right. The only thing that's hard about saying that this Gemara refers to that is that already sounds like Chochmah. So and the Rambam saying that you need that in order to get to metaphysics, but this seems to be saying to get Chochmah per se, you need whatever this type of Chochmah is.
And the giving of Chochmah from God is not. That sounds more metaphysical than just.
So that you could take that approach. You could say that the Chochmah from God is a specific subcategory of Chochmah. Yeah, that's a 4th structural approach, right? Is that it is? That's a subdivision within the approach of saying it's equivocal, right? That you need Davar Katan type Chochmah in order to get Davar Gadol type Chochmah from God. Yeah, you know what? This is actually way too long for me to read in a way that is going to do it justice. I feel like I'm going to end up rushing through it, but yeah, it's in the Mornevuchim 134 is where he talks about it. But yes, good call though. Yeah. Okay. And did you have an approach?
I had a small little something that we didn't really.
Say it again, just in case we.
So coming from the pesukim.
Yeah.
With the Daniel one of being that you you put yourself in a situation to be able to attain that Chochmah, even though it's not actually there present for you.
Yeah.
Pure Daniel wasn't actually able to get this Chochmah on his own.
Right.
He put himself in a place where he could get that Chochmah.
Yeah.
But then the thing was we went to the second pasuk, and I thought maybe that you would fit better with there versus the other pasuk. Then we also didn't have much for the second.
Okay, right. That jogged my memory somehow. Also, of another thing we said, the original thing we had was the Ralbag, who said that it means you need sensory data before you can get concepts. And then I also saw in the Rabinu Yona on Reishis Chochmah Knei Chochmah, Uvchol Kinyan Knei Bina. He's going off of the technical definition of Chochmah of facts, and he says, he quotes the Gemara Shabbos Samachim Amud Aleph, Ligmar Inish v'Hadar Lisbar. First you do girsa, then you do svara. Girsa meaning like you got the facts. Asa l'kamed Rabbi Yishmael Gamar Gemara, Hadar Asla Kamed Rabbi Akiva Vasavar Svara. Right. So he I don't know who this is talking about, but he went to Rabbi Yishmael to get his Gemara, and then he went to Rabbi Akiva and got his Svara. Right. And if you're in this yeshiva, you can go to Rav Pesach for Bekius and Rav Pesach for Svara. So it works out. Yeah. What was that?
As a kind of insulted Rabbi Yishmael.
I know. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It makes me intrigued about what the story is here. Okay. So I think that's the full review. Yeah. Okay. Now you had something you said.
Yeah. So it was on the Tואר.
Tואr. Yeah.
That you need that the person who has Chochmah Kichos Linyan Derech Aris and Musar.
Yeah.
So my thinking is that it's not that it's impossible to get Chochmah if you don't have certain midos perfections.
Mm-hmm.
But it's much harder
mm-hmm.
to not just to get Chochmah that you to actualize Chochmah, but to accept it and like mentally in the first place. Like I feel like I've seen guys in yeshiva who think they know how to learn, know the area, and then like they like have a very hard time learning new things, or like I'll say, like understanding what smart or things like that, because they are trying, because they have like an unwarranted confidence that they have full of knowledge,
right,
which I think stems from a midos thing,
right,
as opposed to guys who are accepting that they need to you need to listen to what the person's saying in order to be able to learn what they're saying.
Right.
I've experienced both myself.
Yeah.
And definitely when I wasn't having the midos problem, it was much easier to learn and understand new things. Right.
So I think that fits in best with the Eziu Chacham Halom we call Adam. Yes. Right. That I mean, we read the Rבינו Yona last time that was talking about the desire for Chochmah, but more fundamental than the desire for Chochmah has to be the recognition that you don't have it and that you're going to need it and get it at any cost. So the more you recognize that you don't know, then the more open you're going to be to knowing things, and the more you think you know, the more you're going to be blocked off from, or your energy's not going to go to, or you're going to be resistant to other knowledge. Yeah. And
I've also seen it with areas where I think I know things about it.
Yeah.
Like things about Pesach, as opposed to, let's say, obscure mitzvahs where I'm like, oh, I definitely don't know anything.
Yeah.
I have noticed the same phenomenon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You gotta. I think that's another benefit. This is why again I have a tendency in my learning to focus on the basic questions every like I saw a Facebook status from Facebook reminded me of a thing I wrote 13 years ago where I was saying I'm trying to understand what is Sibur Yitzias Mitzrayim, and I'm like, yep, this year too. Like it's and the more you confront those basics, the more you realize that you don't understand the basics. And I feel like the basics are most prone to this area where you think you understand the basics and then you can move on. And but being receptive to not knowing the fundamentals is going to make you realize you don't know anything else either. Yeah. Okay. So let's do, yeah.
There's one other thing, like a more practical thing with that as well. Where at times I find myself especially if someone's about to say something that I think I know what they're saying. Even if it is it is something that's basic, we both understand it, that then I'll specifically not let myself finish their sentence for them and kind of just cut them off yeah, I got this. Because there are times where someone will, either from their own perspective of something that they can bring to the table that I wouldn't have had my own, or something that I just was missing altogether. So at times I'll particularly not let myself cut them off or finish a sentence or anything like that. As well. So it's just a practical way of helping with that also.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about that in the Midas Shtika thing in the Raman Bakius 2 years ago. I have the same problem, and the way I solve it, it's hard to actually listen, without wanting to interject. So one of the best techniques I have for doing it, and you'll hopefully notice that I do this, if not, then I need to work on it even more, is when someone says an idea, I try to repeat it back to them to make sure I understand it. And that helps me to filter out what I'm projecting and like imposing and what I'm, and it helps me see if I'm missing what someone is saying. I was going to say that that also requires that the other person is going to be honest and say, yeah, no, that's not what I was saying. So it does take two, but that's definitely a good.
So you repeat what other people say.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Okay. So now let's do a new one. Okay. This one's going to sound like the Tואר, but somehow I just read it. I haven't thought about it yet. It struck me differently. And he quotes a pasuk that I feel like, why don't we know this pasuk? Okay. Nefesh Chaim. This is the book written by Chaim of Volozhin, a student of the Gemara, on, I think the topic is Torah Lishma. I only learned this Sefer, not in its entirety, but I was into this in my first year in yeshiva. I've been meaning to get back to it, but it's been like a long time. So he explains, so similar to the Tואר, that someone who has Chochmah means Yerushalayim. Shagam Yerushalayim nikras Chochmah. Yerushalayim is also called Chochmah. Now check out this pasuk. Kamosh Ne'emar, Hein Yiras Hashem hi Chochmah. Yiras Hashem is Chochmah. Okay, it's in Eov 28:28, which you should have an easy time remembering now because it's koach. V'yomer la'adam, he said to man, Hein yiras Adoshem hi Chochmah. Fear of God is Chochmah. V'sur me'ra bina, and turning away from evil is bina. And I think there's actually a pasuk in Mishlei that says that. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's why it sounds familiar. I'll wait till Ariel's done screenshotting. Okay, hold on. I think it's in Mishlei. Oh, I should just search for Sur me'ra. No, that one is a pasuk. That's in Tehillim, though. I think there's one that says Sur me'ra is Yiras Hashem, maybe is what I'm thinking. Sur me'ra. So slow. What was it?
I was guessing what pasuk.
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing you that.
Yeah, you really. I was thinking about this recently. You really got to thank the Christians, right, for making proximate numbers and pesukim. So much easier to.
I was just listening to a shiur from Rabbi yesterday where he specifically said like the second pasuk in Sheni, and then he said then after like I don't want to use the Christian. And I was thinking that like at the same time there is that like that push and pull of not wanting to use like Christian numbers, but at the same time like there is a lot of, as you're saying, a lot of community. I
mean, the Bali Masorah after the printing press did it, so someone else told me. This I have to confirm. So if anyone confirms it, let me know. Someone told me that it was also this doesn't make sense to me, that there was the Christians who somehow indirectly were responsible for the Vilna Shas layout of.
I thought it was like directly.
Oh, what, really? Okay, I didn't know that. I always assumed it was it was like Jews in Vilna publishing house. Yeah, yeah.
I think it was some like family, I think, some Christian family or something.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I can't find the thing I was looking for. So Hein yiras Hashem hi Chochmah v'sur me'ra bina. So that also creates problems with the pasuk in Tehillim, right? Because yiras Hashem is either Reishis Chochmah or it is Chochmah, right? Like, or maybe it's both. Maybe this is the whole, Reishis Chochmah, Knei Chochmah, and that's what it means. But let's see what the Nefesh Chaim says. He says, "Vatam shiras Shemaim nikras Chochmah." The reason why Yerushalayim is called Chochmah, he hu mishum shehi kein. Oh, this is what I like. Kein otzar shemachnisim letocho tevua. So Yerushalayim is like a warehouse or a storehouse that you put grain in. Shehayira hi haotzar shebo mishtameres miskayim Chochmah. So the yira is the otzar and the tevua is the Chochmah. V'zehu she'amru she'ena kadosh baruch hu nosin umashpia la'adam es haChochmah ha'elyona shel Torah pirush shetiskayim etzlo v'yihi talmudu mishtamer biyado. God does not bestow the higher Chochmah of Torah, meaning that it will not be retained in a person's possession, ela limish yesh bo Yerushalayim, except to a person who has Yerushalayim, shehi ha'otzar shebo mishtameres haChochmah, which is the storage house that you keep Chochmah in. The Yerushalayim tluya ba'adam atzmo, and Yerushalayim is dependent on the person himself. L'chein amru she'im yeshane bo hakadosh baruch hu nosin lo Chochmah. Yeah. Now I don't know what the difference is between this and the Tואר, but the new element he's introducing here is the Otzar module. So I was thinking, what can we get out of that?
That's
I'm trying to find it. It's straight up in the pesukim Yeshayahu, I believe.
Oh yeah.
We did last year. I'm trying to find it. I'm trying to go back.
Should I just look up Otsar and use Yeshayahu? Use the word Otsar?
Yeah, you're Hashem Yotzaro, but.
Oh yes, that is. My guess is that's probably what the Nefesh is going to quote. I tried looking for it, but I got distracted. Let's see, Otsar. Oh, this is much longer than I thought. Okay, so it's like a whole chapter. Let's see how long the chapter. Yeah, all right. Let's we'll rely on the summary and try to figure it out on our own now. If what do you say? Where do you say it was?
Yeshayahu.
Yeah, where? Or do you not know yet?
Don't know.
Okay, there's 11 cases of Otsar. Yep, there it is. 33:6. You got it? Nice.
Well, you got it. But...
Oh, Vaya emunas itecha chosin yeshuvos chochmah v'da'as yiras Hashem hi otzara. Okay, and
that's for the breakdown of what you should be.
Can you look it up in the English?
Yeah.
Just to make sure we got that first part. Vav. Yeah, 33:6. Chosin yeshuvos. So I would say v'haya emunas itecha. So yeah, I get so bothered by the flowery Yeshayahu Hebrew. It's hard to translate. The faith in your times is the shelter of salvations. That's what I would say. What's the first?
The faith of your times will be the strength of your salvation.
Okay, strength. Okay, the strength of your salvations, and then Chochmas voda'as. Oh yeah, and how does that fit in?
Wisdom and knowledge, fear of Hashem, that is man's treasure.
So the puzzle makes it sound like
All equal.
yeah, they're all equal, right? Okay, so let's just look at the what were we doing? Oh yeah, what's the mashal of the Yiras Hashem is the Otsar and the Chochmah is the Tavua. What's that mashal getting at? Yeah. Sorry, the Tavua is the Chochmah, and then this place where you store the Tavua is the Otsar. So the implication is you're not going to really be able to keep your Chochmah very long if you don't have a place to store it. Yeah.
Yeah, the grain's going to rot if you don't properly store it. And so you need a system for properly storing it in order for the.
Okay, so let's flesh out the nimshal. So that's a good elaboration on the mashal. Yeah.
I think if you're not placing your Chochmah in the framework of Yiras Hashem, then over time you'll distort it to be what you want it.
Okay, so I think that's a good mashal for rotting, right? Is that it's going to deteriorate because you're going to allow. So the just working definition of Yiras Hashem here, meaning Musar Chochmah, just to plug in our Mishlei definition here, is disciplining your emotions to be subordinate to your Chochmah. So if you don't go through that process, then whatever produce you put in, whatever Chochmah you put in, is going to get distorted by your emotions. You got to preserve it. Yeah.
Another related source is the Pirkei Avot.
Yeah. Cool.
I don't know.
Kol she'yiras chato kodems lechochmas o chochmas miskayemes v'kol she'ein yiras chato kodems lechochmas o ein chochmas o miskayemes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was the pasuk says rotting, or we're saying.
We're saying rotting is and because I think that's why you need a storehouse because.
I was thinking a little differently. I was thinking that that it doesn't necessarily have to be rotting. It could also be like a place where it's to protect your Chochmah, and so that it won't go away, or animals or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Right. To protect it. Yeah. That is another good approach. Right. So how could you say that it protects it? Well, so that's another thing also is that let's say you have an idea. This is the flip side of what you're saying, or not the flip side, the complement of what you're saying is that if you have a certain idea of Chochmah, but you don't take the measures in your habits and in your safeguards to keep yourself acting in line with it, then your habits will take over and you'll end up just acting contrary to the Chochmah. Right. That's a good thing also. So it could either intellectually distort it or distort it in terms of the your practice of it. Yeah. So that's good, Marshall. So according to this, it's not an absolute thing either. It's not that you can only get Chochmah if you have Yiras Hashem. It's that you only retain the Chochmah if you have Yiras Hashem. Right, in terms of our Gemara. Right? Yeah. Okay. Onward. What do we want to do? Do we want to go more in these Masifta summaries? Do we want to do the pasuk in Mishlei, Reshis Chachma Knei Chachma? Do we want to try to figure out the Daniel versus Shemos?
Yeah.
What were the first options?
Continue going on in the Masifta. I only read up to the Nefesh Chaim. Or do we want to do the Reishis Chacham Knei Chacham, or do we want to try to figure out the limudim from Daniel versus
I'm interested in racial Chochmah,
I don't have a
Same.
thing.
saying that you don't have a preference?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. All right, you're speaking about this tonight?
I would like to.
You would like to? Okay.
It's either this or Achsher.
Okay, I feel like I really want to understand the pesukim if we can. Okay, so let's give the pesukim another try. Where did they go? Or where did the Gemara go? I guess I gotta go back to the Gemara. You know what? If you want to get Tanakhs, I think it'll be easier to like look at the actual Tanakhs than to. I have mine here. You don't need one from me. I had the exact same thought.
This is how it worked out, fellas.
Very smart.
Just some groceries.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Okay, so Daniel chapter 2. It's not. Yeah, I had the same question. I found that same. Is that a flashcard?
Yep.
Yeah. It was a wait, what did it say? Media? Yeah, media, yeah.
Something, anything since, and 7e.
It might be.
What is negative 7e?
It's definitely not one.
No?
Nope. That's not my handwriting. Also not my style.
I'm not saying, all right.
Yeah. Okay.
So where are we going?
So Daniel 2, so it's page 1777. Pasuk 20. Yeah. This is so let's just read it again. Daniel exclaimed and said, "May the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He alters times and seasons. He deposes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who know how to reason. He reveals the deep and the mysterious. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. To you, O God of my forefathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and now you have made known to me what we requested of you, for you have made known to us the matter of the king." So this is, I don't know if I said this clearly earlier, this is after God gives him the Chochmah he was requesting. So this is a Hodah, okay? And the reason why he says, if you're wondering what Pasuk 21 is doing in there, he alters times and seasons, he deposes kings and establishes kings. That's because the dream was about the Seder of the kings and the exiles. And so it was about how Nebuchadnezzar is going to be replaced by, Babel is going to be replaced by Persia and Media, which is going to be replaced by Greece, which is going to be replaced by Rome. So that's what it's relevant there. So that's one case. And then the other one is in our Parsha Kisisa, chapter 31. And this is the harder one, in my opinion. This is page 215. Yeah. Starting from the beginning of the parak, of the Christian parak. Hashem spoke to Moses saying, "See, I have called by the name Bezalel ben Uri ben Hur of the tribe of Yehuda. I have filled him with a godly spirit, with wisdom, insight, and knowledge, and with every craft, to weave designs, to work with gold, silver, and copper, stone cutting for setting, and wood carving to perform every craft. And I, behold, I have assigned with him Oholiav ben Achisamach lamate Dan, and I have endowed the heart of every wise-hearted person with wisdom, and they shall make all that I have commanded you." And then it goes through all the stuff. So the difficulty here, I mentioned last time, is like, what Chochmah is it that it's talking about there? Is it Chochmah in the crafts? Is it Chochmah in like the knowledge of the sodos that the Mishkan and the Kalim are supposed to like teach you about? Is it knowledge of God? Is it, is it some combo? Yeah. Geometry. Must be. It's the only thing. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, does this help us? Are these two different takes on the idea of Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nosin Chachma Elo L'mi Sheyesh Lo Chachma, or are these just two different asmachtos? And I have no idea where to go from here.
And we're quoting the whole pasuk from Daniel? Like what's the main part?
The main part is he gives Chochmah to the second half of 21. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who know how to reason.
So my intuition would tell me that the first half of the pasuk is in some way elaborating.
Okay, I mean that's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
Influencing the.
Yeah. I mean the only reason my counter intuition is that of this shavach here, the first half of 21 is the only one that is referring to the particular thing that he's giving hodah on, and he's contextualizing that with all of this other stuff, which might bridge to your intuition.
He does say in the previous pasuk, right, that wisdom and might are his.
Yeah, and he says it
goes into might and then wisdom.
Oh, that's interesting. That's good. That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, that moves me one notch over to your intuition.
Oh, that moved me one notch into your.
Oh yeah. Okay, maybe this is a sign that this is a similar approach. Yeah.
Can we just say?
Oh yeah. So so Sean's intuition was that we need to understand all of 21. We need to understand the first half of 21 in order to understand how the Gemara is using the second half of 21. And my intuition was that no, the first half of 21 is just talking about the particular thing that Daniel was giving hodah on, but the rest of his tefillah is really about God's relationship to Chochmah in general. And then Sean pointed out that in the end of 20, it talks about Chochmah and Gevura, and then 21 talks about the Gevura, then it talks about the Chochmah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, it does seem like they're separate, but there is some relationship.
Well, it's a chiasm, so it's like it's related. Yeah. So the Gevura thing is an interesting point. Yeah, see, it's so hard to tell. I mean, I feel like this is a question no one answers, because there's no one answer, which is whenever Chazal quote a pasuk, how much do you take into account the context? Yeah.
Yeah. So two things. We also have been talking a lot about Yiras Hashem as a necessity for Chochmah.
Okay.
And the seasons and kings both seem to be elements of security. Mm-hmm. Right. The seasons in terms of produce and the different things that are going to be coming out through that, and you're really beholden to God's time and the way in which nature works, and also in terms of societal structure and security, that also is something that is and so you need to have that understanding in order for you to then be able to. Okay,
I think I can bring you a raya. Let me just find it. Hold on. I thought this was an explicit thing. Okay. Well, I think it still works. Okay, look at page 1785. This is Daniel chapter 4. So this is a letter that Nebuchadnezzar wrote, and so he talks about having another dream. Okay. And he talks about, this is a letter he wrote and sent to all of his provinces. So I guess start with beginning of chapter 4. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was tranquil in my house and vigorous in my palace. I saw a dream that frightened me, and my thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head bewildered me. I issued a command to bring to me all the sages of Babylonia, so that they would make known to me the interpretation of the dream. The necromancers, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the demonists came. Oh, demonist, that's quite a word. I related the dream before them, but they could not make known its interpretation to me. At last there came before me Daniel, whose name is Belshazzar, after the name of my God. So he renames Daniel and his friends by Avodah names. So Belshazzar is Daniel, not to be confused with Belshazzar, who is the king who came after Nebuchadnezzar. What? Oh. Yeah. And in whom the spirit of the holy God, and I relayed the dream before him. Belshazzar, chief of the necromancers, since I know that the spirit of the holy God is in you and no secret is hidden from you, this is the vision of the dream I saw. Tell its interpretation. So here's the dream. This is not the first dream. This is a new one. These were the visions of my head upon my bed. I was watching, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth. The height of it was great. The tree grew and became strong. Its height reached to the heavens. It was visible to the end of the entire earth. Its foliage was beautiful and its fruit plentiful, and there was food for all in it. Under it, the beasts of the field took shade. and the birds of the heaven nested in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. In the visions of my head upon my bed, I was watching, and behold, a holy angel came down from heaven. He cried out loudly and said thus, chop down the tree and cut off its branches, cast down its foliage and scatter its fruit. Let the animals move away from under it and the birds from its branches. However, leave its major roots in the ground, secured with a band of iron and copper in the herbage of the field. Let it be washed by the dew of heaven, and let its lot be together with the beasts in the grass of the earth. They will change its heart from that of a man, and a beast's heart will be given to it, and 7 periods will pass over it. What word does it use for 7 periods here? That was pasuk 13. Idanin, yeah. So that means times. Okay. And the matter is by decree of the angels, and the sentence is by word of the Holy One, so that all living beings may know that the Supreme One rules over the kingdom of man, giving it to whomever he wishes and appointing the lowest of men over it. Okay, so that's the dream. This dream I saw King Nebuchadnezzar, and you, Belshazzar, tell me its interpretation, because all the sages of my kingdom are unable to make the interpretation known to me, but you can, for the Spirit of God is in you. Then Daniel, whose name is Belshazzar, was silent for a while, and his thoughts confounded him. Okay, so that was because Daniel is, this is not a good dream for Nebuchadnezzar. So he's like, he didn't want to tell him. The king exclaimed and said, Belshazzar, let the dream and its interpretation not bewilder you. Belshazzar replied and said, my lord, may this dream be upon your foes and its interpretation upon your enemies. So he's like, the tree that you saw, which grew and became strong, whose height reached the heavens and which was visible to the entire earth, whose foliage was beautiful and whose fruit plentiful, with food for all in it, under which dwell the beasts of the field and in whose branches nested the birds of the heaven. It is you, O king, who have grown and become powerful. Your greatness has grown and reached the sky, your dominion to the end of the earth. And that which the king saw, a holy angel came down from heaven and said, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave its major roots in the ground, secured with a band of iron and copper in the herbage of the field. It will be washed by the dew of the heaven, and its lot will be with the beasts of the field until 7 periods pass over it. This is interpretation, O king. There's the decree of the Supreme One that befalls my lord the king. They will drive you from mankind, and your dwelling will be among the dew of heaven, and 7 periods will pass over you, until you recognize that the Supreme One rules over the kingdom of man, and he gives it to whoever he wishes. We'll see what happens. As to that which they said, to leave the major roots of the tree, your kingdom will remain for you after you recognize that heaven rules. Nevertheless, O king, let my advice be acceptable to you. Redeem your sin through righteousness and your iniquities through kindness to the poor. Perhaps there will be an extension to your tranquility. Okay, so here's what happens now. All of this befell King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking atop the royal palace of Babylon. You got to picture this in your mind, those of you who can picture things. The king exclaimed and said, is this not the great Babylon, which I have built up into a royal house with my powerful strength for glorification of my splendor? While the words were still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. To you, King Nebuchadnezzar, we say, the kingdom has departed from you. We are driving you from mankind, and your dwelling will be with the beasts of the field. They will feed you grass like oxen, and 7 periods will pass over you until you recognize that the Supreme One rules over the kingdom of man, and he gives it to whomever he wishes. At that moment, the decree befell Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from mankind. He ate grass like oxen, and his body was washed by the dew of heaven until his hair grew like eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird talons. At the end of the 7 period of years, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes to the heaven, and my senses returned to me. I blessed the Supreme One, and I praised and glorified the Eternal One, whose rule is an eternal rule, and whose kingship is for all generations. All the inhabitants of the earth were reckoned as nothing, and he acts according to his will with the hosts of heaven and the inhabitants of the earth. There is no one who can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? At that time, my senses returned to me, and I returned to the glory of my kingdom. My appearance came back to me, and my ministers and nobles sought me. I was reestablished over my kingdom, and additional greatness was given to me. Okay, so that's the story of Nebuchadnezzar turning into an animal. Yeah, and he basically went mad for 7 years, and there's a great painting of him. King Nebuchadnezzar. Beast. So the reason why I want to read all of that is that's exactly like what you were saying, that this was a distortion in terms of who actually gives the gevura, right? And basically he took credit for the entire Bavel and the entire glory of Bavel, and then God basically said, no, I'm going to make you learn this lesson, and he deposed him from the kingship and made him into like the lowest of man, which is ultimately what can be the lesson of Yiras Hashem is. So yeah. And then he did tshuva somehow. Yeah, I mean, he did recognize that God, the whole question of like what faculties did he still have, such that he could do tshuva. Sorry, that was a lot longer than I remembered it being, but now you got some Daniel vacuous. So let's just summarize what we're holding right now. So in terms of the Gemara, the the Daniel context seems to be about, okay, so we're treating this with the approach that the Chochmah here is Yiras Hashem, right? That God only gives Chochmah to those who have Yiras Hashem. And how does this help us? Or does it? I went here because it felt like it was a natural extension of the approach we were taking here. Wow, sorry, I didn't realize that took so long. It's 9/11.
So you're just asking it?
Say again, what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, does that context of I know it's a different story than the pasuk that we're quoting here, but it's a similar example of like Daniel giving Chochmah to Nebuchadnezzar and acknowledging that Chochmah and Gvura come from God, and that was the message of, that's how we got there. That's the message of the vision in chapter 2, which is Daniel got Chochmah from God, which told him that the Gvura does not belong to Nebuchadnezzar, it belongs to Hashem, and God will give the kingship to whoever he wishes, and that the two are somehow related. Yeah.
I think so much what Isaac had been saying before. That giving Chochmah to someone who's not a fitting receptacle for it can do them a lot of harm. And so then also in our context, then building oneself up as a Chacham.
Yeah.
Then they need to make themselves fitting to be acquiring that to
right.
actually build in a proper way.
Okay.
It's just getting knowledge that will then drive you crazy.
Right.
Something else like that.
Right. Okay, that fits in with the Daniel context. So let's just contrast that. See if we can get what would be the difference in the Betzalel and Oholiav context, right? And again, it's hard because we don't know exactly what Chochmah that was referring to, but something having to do with Mikdash. I mean, I'm pretty convinced of the fact that what Chochmah is talking about is they definitely need to have Chochmah of the craft, but they were doing art, and in order to do art. Then, well, all right, I'll bust out my article on art because this is still the best understanding of art that I have, and this will help you understand the Mishkan. So this is from Ayn Rand's book on art, and so she says, metaphysics, the science that deals with the fundamental nature of reality, involves man's widest abstractions. It includes every concrete that he has ever perceived and involves such a vast sum of knowledge and such a long chain of concepts that no man could hold it in all the focus of his immediate conscious awareness. Yet he needs that sum and that awareness to guide him. He needs the power to summon them into full conscious force. That power is given to him by art. And here's the definition. Art is a selective recreation of reality according to an artist's metaphysical value judgments. Okay, let that sink in for a second. Art is a selective recreation of reality according to an artist's metaphysical value judgments. And then she explains what she means. By a selective recreation, art isolates and integrates those aspects of reality which represent man's fundamental view of himself and of existence. Out of the countless number of concretes, of single, disorganized, and seemingly contradictory attributes, actions, and entities, an artist isolates the things which he regards as metaphysically essential and integrates them into a single new concrete that represents an embodied abstraction. For instance, consider two statues of man. One is a Greek god, the other is a deformed medieval monstrosity. Both are metaphysical estimates of man. Both are projections of the artist's view of man's nature. Both are concretized representations of the philosophy of their respective cultures. Art is a concretization of metaphysics. Art brings man's concepts to the perceptual level of his consciousness and allows him to grasp them directly as if they were percepts. Beautiful definition of what art does. And that's why in order to make the Kalim of the Mikdash and to design the Mikdash, you need metaphysicians who are also artists, because they need to understand what metaphysical ideas are being conveyed here, and they need to be able to translate them into things that visually bring those to mind in the people, yeah.
So that fits with actually the tentative approach that I was
I also something lit up also just now, yeah.
Which is that the people who had Chochmah, meaning the people who already had a certain perfection of character or ideas or something, because they're the ones who are rowing for maybe doing art, building the cash.
Yeah.
So I guess it didn't
I'm not getting the particular point that you're making.
Yeah.
Well, let's just translate. If we're going to say that this is the idea that it's describing in the pesukim, so then what it means is that no, I also meant the same point. I just got focused to say the same thing. Yeah. But one thing we see, this is very different than the type of relationship to Chochmah that is described in Daniel, I think. And this is a different dimension of perfection of the emotions that you need to have, like, in other words, like this, is in Mikdash, whatever the ideas are, it's, kruvim are very, like, metaphysical, like, require metaphysical knowledge. So if you're going to make kruvim, you have to have that knowledge, and you have to not let your emotions and imagination dictate how you make the art, right? Your emotions and imagination have to be so finely honed that they are natural extensions of your Chochmah. That's the vibe I'm getting. Yeah, David?
With what you're saying also, the idea of like how things in Mikdash have to be incredibly precise and like no personal touch whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think alongside that, lieu kol chacham lieu, kol chacham lieu nachati chacham.
Yeah.
That seems like the person who's going to get Chochmah is one who is a chacham lieu, that they have done whatever it is like separating their own personal touch from the Chochmah, and they're able to make a differentiation and distinguish the two.
Yeah.
And that is when they can actually acquire Chochmah.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Also, the fact that it's chacham lieu.
Lieu, yeah, right. As the Daniel's Chachamim, people who are wise, right? Yeah.
And this seems to be like also it's like knowing yourself as a way of then being able to actually get abstract ideas and
right.
Chochmah better. That's working.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like we took some steps closer, and I like the idea of the otzar and the tavua, but there still remains much to be figured out here. But I think this is an interesting Gemara. Yeah. All right. Hope that was useful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very interesting.